friends, welcome to the Jazz Ranch Studio. I'm going to be talking about turnarounds in this video, and I had a request from a subscriber to explain how to play a turnaround using good voice leading. Now, that's two subjects. In other words, good voice leading is something you want to understand as well as turnarounds. Now, first of all, turnarounds just means that you're playing a chord progression at the end of a song that takes you back to the beginning. Rather than say the song ends on the one chord, we're in the key of C, and the last chord is C6, with the melody note being C. You're not just going to sit on that chord, but you're going to play a progression, or at least put a 5 chord in there to take you back to the first chord of the song, and we're going to assume in this case that it's the 1 chord again. So the 1 chord at the end and the 1 chord at the beginning, you need something to take you there, and you can use a progression like just the 5 chord. If it's the key of C, the G7, take you back to C, or a 2-5-1, D minor 7, G7, or a 1-6-2-5. I'm going to show you a variety of these using good voice leading. Now that just means that you want to use economy of motion in how you're voicing the chords. In other words, the notes in the chord want to move in stepwise movement or chromatic movement, so you have economy of motion. That's the professional sound. You're not jumping around on the keyboard. So that being said, we're going to start out, and I'm going to use an example of a tune in C time after time, and it ends like this. I'll just use the last passage of it. Let's see. Right there. So it ends on C, and then there's one measure, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you put the 5 chord in there and then start again. Melody starts on the E. So we end on the C, and the melody at the beginning of the song starts on E. So how do we get from that ending to that beginning in one measure? Well, actually, 2 measures. Actually, we end on the C. So now we have 2 measures to work with. So we can just stay on the C, move to the 5 chord on the next measure, and then start on the E again with the C chord. But better yet is to do a 1-6-2-5, or at least a 2-5. So if it's a 2-5, it's C and then D minor 7. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the first example. I'm going to show you is a 1-6-2-5. So 1-6-2-5 in C is C6 or C major 7, C6 in this case, 6-9, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7. That's basically it in its simplest form. So if we end on C, we can just go A minor there, and then D minor, and then G7 here. Now, that's not so good. It works because you see there's economy of motion. There's very little movement in the voicings. That top note just stays right on C and then goes to B. Now you have to go down to E. So that's not so good. So what we want to do is create a progression that's going to take us to the E. So that top note in the voicing becomes an important point. So I'm going to give you this. You see now, that required that I altered that dominant 7th chord. So I went C6 there, ending on the C. Then I went down here to the A minor, and down here to the D minor, and then here, which creates a nice chromatic approach to the melody note E. So that's the one I'm going to use. Let's see what it sounds like. see how that works beautifully. Now, see, so that's the important point in your voicings. And in the progression that I'm using the 1-6-2-5 progression, but I'm also creating a little melody, this one. I'm creating something interesting melodically in how I'm voicing the chords, with that note on the top being what you really hear the most. You hear them, you always hear the top note the best. I mean, you could emphasize another note and not emphasize the top note, but usually that top note is what we hear. So now, there you have the 1-6-2-5. Then you could do just the 2-5. You could just end like a, and then just go to 2-5, or just 2-5 back to 1. Now, there's varieties of these turnarounds. Many. Too many to give you, really, but I'll give you a few. And the first one I'm going to use is going to be using tritone substitutes. So instead of the A minor, let me put it this way. I'm going to, instead of making an A minor, I'm going to make it an A7. I'm going to alter the 6th chord to dominant. Why? Because it's really 5 of 2. So it's the 5 chord of the D minor. So in that case, now I can do something like this. And then I can alter the 5 chord like this. See, so now I have an interesting melody there on the turnaround. Right? And jazzier sounding chords. If I can use the term jazzier. In other words, jazz chords have more alterations in them. You know, flat 9s, sharp 5s, that kind of thing. So here we have, instead of an A minor chord, which is kind of boring, you know, that's kind of boring. Much more interesting. I have an A7 with a 13, there's a 13, and a flat 9 on the top. You might wonder, why is the flat 9 above the 13? Well, don't worry about that. The flat 9's down there too. It's just up an octave. Alright? Why is it a 13? Because there's the octave. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Right? I'm going up the A scale. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You know, so flat 9 up an octave. So there you have it. You can arrange these any way you like. But I mean, there it is with the 13, the flat 9 there. Which leads nicely to this D minor 7 voice there. You can make it a 9 if you put that note in. Then you can go here down a half step and have a flat 9 on the G7 and an augmented 5th, which is the same as a flat 13. So that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 flat. So now say I want to get to that E, I might change that chord there. I might go, well, I could go make the G7 there with a flat 9. See, I like that chromatic approach to that melody note. You know, from here, da 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 da, or dee da da da. No, I like that chromatic. Most chords are either cyclical or chromatic. In other words, chromatic movement is great, cyclical movement is great. This is cyclical. That's a 2-5-1. That's the cycle. These are chromatic. There to there to there is chromatic. Here or this, there, that's chromatic movement. You see, so that's all good. That's the jazz sound. Is cycle of 5ths, 2-5-1s, and chromatic movement, melodically or harmonically. So now, let's see what it would look like as a rootless voicing. Now, see, I'm playing these as spread voicings, so I've got the roots on the bottom. So now, if I do a rootless voicing, I'm going to have this. Maybe something like this. See, that's a nice turnaround now with the C6 to an A7 augmented up here with a flat 9, and then the D minor 9 there, and then the G7 with the flat 9 there. You see? And so those are rootless. So this is a first inversion chord, this is a third inversion chord, this is a first inversion chord, this is a third inversion chord there on the rootless. You want to look up my videos on rootless voicings to understand this if you don't understand it. Now if I want to approach that E, I might do this. Go like that. It's the same thing, it's just that I'm making that chromatic move, or I could do this. Or I could do it something like this. Yeah, I could do that. Or I could do this. See? I'm giving you the example of time after time to make it practical. Now, next step, next example is using tritone substitutes. Now, what that means is instead of the A minor on the second chord, I'm going to go to its tritone substitute, which would be up a flat 5 or E flat. So I'm going to play, think of it as an A7, and then go up a flat 5, 1, 3, 5 flat to an E flat. And then I'm going to go to a, instead of a D minor, we're going to go to a D7. Instead of a G7, I'm going to go to a D flat 7. Remember, G7 now, up a flat 5 would be D flat. So the tritone substitute is a flat 5 relationship to the chord in question. So if it's an A7, then its tritone would be E flat 7, and if it's a G7, its tritone would be D flat 7. Now what this does is it creates chromatic movement harmonically. See, E flat 7, down to D7, down to D flat 7. So these are all chromatics. Up a flat, a minor third in dominant, down a half step in dominant, down another half step. So there you have it. Now we could do it this way. See, so that's a nice turnaround too. So we had this turnaround. Let's look at it. Now we have this turnaround. Right? In other words, those dominant 7th tritones. So let's try it out. See how nicely that works with the tritone substitutes. Now you can mix it up. You can use some tritones and then omit some. So like you might go from the C, instead of going to the E flat, you might go to the A7 and then put in the tritone substitute of the D minor. In other words, now you'd have down a half step, then down to G7, or you could go A flat, then to D flat. So you can mix these up. Put some tritones in, omit some. So here's another example. C, A7 flat 9, A flat 13, G7 flat 9, 13. So here you have this. You see, so when you're playing a song, you can work these out or just ad-lib them. In other words, just come up with them on the spur of the moment. And hopefully, if you're playing with a bass player, he'll be watching you and follow along with what you're doing. So now, another example is a variation. Instead of resolving to the 1 chord, you might resolve to the flat 7. Like it's kind of like a fake out resolution, you know, you're not expecting that B flat chord there. It's a B flat dominant 7/13 with a 9 in it. And then you just go down the scale to get to the G7. Now you're back to 1, right? So instead of resolving to 1, you resolve to the flat 7 and then move down chromatically. So, and actually, this tune goes like this. Now here goes B flat. See, that's a nice way to do it too, is to go to that B flat, the flat 7 chord, rather than the 1. It keeps the forward motion. You know, it doesn't sit on the 1 chord. It keeps forward motion. Yeah, so you've seen the varieties, like these varieties. Now, you can also make these chords major chords rather than dominants. So I could have this. 6/9, and then E flat 6/9, then A flat 6/9, and D flat major 7 6/9. Instead of dominants, make them major chords. That's a modern sound, you know. See, that's a modern sound. That's using the 6/9s instead of the dominant chords is another idea. Now, those are all turnarounds that take you resolving to the 1 chord and going back to the 1 chord. In other words, you end on C, and then you're going to begin on the C chord again at the beginning of the song. And it can be, you know, a 4-bar turnaround, a 1-bar turnaround, a 2-bar turnaround, however you want to do it. However the tune is going to allow that, or how it's written. Now, supposing the tune starts on the 2 chord and not on the 1 chord. An example would be I Get a Kick Out of You is a good one to think of. Starts on the D minor 7, so there the melody starts on the 5 of the D minor. You know, so another one is I've Got You Under My Skin. Starts on the 2 chord. So you're not going to use a 1 6 2 5. You could, but better yet is a 1 4 3 6. Why? Because ending on the 6 chord dominant is the 5 chord of the 2. In other words, A7 would be 5 of D minor. So it's always the 5 chord that is going to approach whatever the beginning chord is of the song. So if it's the 2 chord or D minor, you want the A7 in there. So a good turnaround would be F, we're ending on C now, C, F7, then maybe an E minor 7 flat 5 to an A7 to a D minor. Now, why do I use the E minor 7 flat 5? Only because the D minor scale relates to F major, even though we're in the key of C. You have that B flat in there. You don't need to use the half diminished, but often it sounds nice to use it. So like, let's try that on I Got a Kick Out of You. That's how I voiced it. I voiced it like this. I want to get to that. I want to get to that note actually. I want to get. So I want to get to that note so I can go like maybe. There I am. So there's that half step, flat 9 there. Or I could go. Or here. No. There. You see, so I think the important thing to learn here is not only how to use these turnarounds, but to learn how to voice them so that they sound good melodically as well as harmonically. So this sounds good, you know. To get me to that first note, first melody note of the song. So, you know, I get a kick out of you is going to start on that A. So I want to go here. There, that works nicely to get me to that A. So that's something I think about a lot when I'm thinking of a turnaround. What's going to sound good melodically as well as harmonically. Now, okay, the cat wants to get out. Okay, so now you had the example of the turnaround for the 2 chord, and it could just go to the 5, you know, and to the 2 like that. It could be as simple as that. But the 1, 4, 3, 6. Okay, so the turnaround to the 2 chord, which would have the 6th chord dominant, you could just go to the 6th chord from the 1 chord and then right to the 2 chord that way and keep it simple. But the 1, 4, 3, 6 is more interesting, right? You could eliminate the 4 and just do the 2, 5 into the 2 chord. Now, supposing the song starts on the 4 chord. The example would be the tune Just Friends, you know, like. Okay, so it starts on the 4 chord, so in the key of C it would start in F, on F. How do we get around to the 4 chord? Well, we're going to do the same concept of the 2, 5 into 4. So what's 2, 5 into 4? What's 2, 5 into F? G minor 7, C7. So we could just end on the C chord and then make it a dominant, right? Maybe dress it up with a sharp 5. Go there. Or we could do a turnaround which includes the 2, 5. So G minor 7, C7, or we could put something in front of the 2, like maybe an A flat, tritone substitute. Like that. Or we could use tritone substitutes like this. A flat, G minor, G flat. So there you have some ideas to get to the 4 chord. Now how about if you're in the key, you're in a relative minor, and you end on the relative major, like the song Fly Me to the Moon. So it ends on C. Now I want to get to A minor. Well, 2, 5 again. B minor 7, E7. See, so see, let's go from the end. We're on C2. 2, 5, 1, B minor 7, E7, A minor 7. So you go down a half step to the half diminished. You want half diminished because you're going into a minor chord. So its scale is going to have that note in it. I'm sorry. Going to have that flat 5 in there, taking you to the minor. Now supposing, I'm going to give you another example where you use a diminished chord approach to the minor. I'm going to use it with the song My Funny Valentine. At the end, I'm going to go to E flat now. So like, and on the E flat major, down a half step, and then a diminished approach. Now the diminished is just a chromatic approach from a half step below the root. But it's the same as the G7, the 5, with a flat 9 in it. But you're using that root of the half step below. And it works really well with minor chords because you can see that B diminished now, this note moves down, this note moves up, and this note moves up a half step, and you're right on the C minor chord. No. So really, those diminished chords really approach the minor chords a half step higher really nicely. And they also move in both directions, from above, half step above or half step below, but most often in half steps that way. Now how about a song like Autumn Leaves? People wonder how do you create a introduction to this song, and that's a good question. But I mean, at the end of the song, you know, you have I'm going to take it in D minor. Interesting, it starts on the 2 chord of the relative major, but it's really a D minor chord. Then it goes to G minor, 2, 5, 1 into F major, and 2, 5, 1 into the relative minor. So you're really on a minor, you're really on the minor chord. So all you need is the 2, 5 into the minor. And that happens at the end of the song anyway. You have this. So you're staying on the D minor, but do you really want to stay on it? So I would go, or I would do something. Or I would do. So you know, I could go. But that's not so good. It's really a D minor. So maybe just the D minor up a half step to E flat major, the D minor, or an A sus. It's a D minor chord is that opening chord. So you're ending on a D minor. So put the E flat in there, or the A sus. See, that's something you can do if you don't want to just sit on the D minor like that. Another example would be the song Nature Boy. Let's look at that. Now here, I can go to the 5 chord, but by way of a half step above it, because I'm on a D minor there. I'm going back to D minor. So I did the half step above, which is essentially a tritone substitute like the 2. What's it? You see, so you keep in mind that the 2, 5, 1, when you use the tritone substitute, is going to have that half step movement like that to the 5 chord. So that's that's a good way to vary the pattern of the 2-5 and not always be stuck on the idea of the 2-5. So that's where I'm going to leave it for now. I think that's enough to look at, and you have the sheet to download so you can learn all of these in just the key of C for the most part. There's a few other keys there, E flat and D minor, to try other things out. You want to learn these in all your keys eventually, but just start out and get the basic principles of the bassline movement, the chord progression, and the voice leading, the economy of motion. To get those concepts down is the essential things you want to learn from this lesson. So thanks so much for watching. Write to me if you have questions or comments. I love to hear from you. So we'll see you next time around. We'll have a sign off now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Signing off from the Jazz Ranch. Thanks so much for tuning in today. I want to give you a little shout out on my book. This is my book called Jazz Piano Methods and Songbook for Professional Playing. I've sold thousands of copies. I have a special sale going on right now. If you buy my book, you'll get my 140-page appendix of exercises for free. All you have to do is order my book through my website and then write to me, and my email address is below, and I will send that to you directly to your email. So please check out the videos I've made on both books so you can see everything that's inside them. Where can you go and see a complete inside of a book on a video? Only here at the Jazz Ranch. So thanks for tuning in today. Please give me a comment. I love to hear from you. I always answer all comments. You'll see that I do answer all comments if you give me enough time. And until next time, in the words of my great friend upstairs, Hermie Dressel, I'll say, swing loose. We'll see you next time around. Be cool. Bye-bye.